Welcome to Altitude Advantage, the first one of the regular season. I'm your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. He is your lead writer, Aric DiLalla. And the Denver Broncos start the season 0-1. They fall on the road to Seattle Seahawks 26-20 in a game that was really a tale of two halves. Now, we're going to get into a lot more detail, but what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think that one, obviously always tough to start the year with a loss. Nobody wants to see that, obviously, but I do think that this was a game where the Broncos had their chances, and especially early, Alex Singleton gets an interception that puts you in the red zone. Later in the game, in the second quarter, J.L. Skinner recovers a muff punt that gives you the ball down inside the 10-yard line, and the Broncos had their opportunities to put the game away early, or at least put some distance between themselves and the Seahawks. Unfortunately, they're not able to capitalize. I think, as expected, maybe it was a bit of a struggle, a bit of a challenge in Bo Nix's first start, especially against a defense like Seattle's that is it presents so many different looks. And so when you look at this game, you saw a defense that played really well early, but the Broncos are unable to capitalize on those chances at the beginning, ends up coming back to bite them at the end of the game. They just weren't able to get the points really when they needed to, Elisa. And I think you're encouraged by the Broncos' resilience, their ability to fight. Basically, if you had a chance there at the end to get off the field and give your offense one last opportunity there. And when I rewatched the game this morning, I felt better about what I saw than I did on Sunday. But that's the nature of the NFL, is you're going to have opportunities. You have to take advantage of them. Unfortunately, the Broncos do not. We know it's a young team, but they've got to learn how to take advantage and use those opportunities to score points and win. And that's why the Broncos are 0-1 this morning.
Well, I also think you see the defense, and you see a lot of leadership there. Jonathan Cooper had a really big sack on Geno Smith, ended up setting up that interception by Alex Singleton. And Cooper had a pretty good game as well. Special teams had a couple things. I feel like they executed the perfect kick when they were able to back up the Seahawks at the one and getting a safety out of that. 2 safeties in that game. There was a lot of positives coming out from the defense and special team sides. Now, to your point, the offensive struggles really kind of showed. And, head coach Sean Payton touched on that, on Monday morning and those things. He touched on that last night. But the vibe I got from the guys in the locker room, yes, none of them like to lose. Josh Reynolds said it. He's like, I hate losing. Like, they're like, what are your emotions? He's like, I hate losing. Like, what do you want me to say? But I do think the vibe that I got from, Mike McGlinchey, Alex Singleton, Josh Reynolds, even Pat Surtain was just like, we know we lost, but they're not things that aren't unfixable. They're not things that we're like, oh man, we're just a bad team. Dun, dun, dun. Like, no, like they're very like, yeah, we should have had this. We could have had this. And I think that confidence that you're going to infuse back into your rookie quarterback, I think is going to do him good, right?
Yeah. And listen, I think there were flashes, right? I mean, Bo Nix, late in the first half, steps up in the pocket, throws a nice pass down the middle of the field to Cortland Sutton. He hits Josh Reynolds 25 yards down the field on a back shoulder that gives the Broncos a field goal before halftime. Certainly on the last drive, the last offensive possession of the game, he scrambles down the left side to give the Broncos a big gain and then scores a touchdown. His first NFL touchdown ends up being he takes off into the end zone. I
know, that's a big deal. Like, first of all, clap it up. You wanted touchdowns the first game. You got one. He scrambled in. I mean, that also shows, like you said, like that tenacity. Like, Mike McGlinchey said, like it's one thing when you're losing and things aren't going your quarterback's way. It's another thing when you still see him in the huddle, commanding the huddle, and still putting his body out on the line for that touchdown.
Yeah, absolutely. And he didn't quit. This team didn't quit. And listen, obviously there are certain things that are just, you don't expect anybody to quit. Like that's what you want out of your quarterback. That's what you expect out of your quarterback. But it's still good to see him battle back. And certainly from a consistency standpoint, there's probably a couple throws he'd like to have back. But I think especially early, and this is almost like what you're looking for in preseason, is what flashes do you see that show, hey, Bo Nix can be a really good NFL quarterback? And I thought there were times where you saw that on Sunday against the Seahawks, again, against a really good defense and a really loud environment. I think the key is, and Sean Payton has now said this, he said it after the game Sunday, and he said it Monday, we have to be better around him. We have to help him. And He mentioned a couple of drops by the wide receivers. He mentioned the running game not being good enough, mentioned the protection being somewhat average. I mean, this Broncos offense has to be able to help Bo. And I think as I watched the game back, there were certainly some throws from Bo that you're like, okay, maybe, that one got away from him a little bit. But there were also times where I watched and I said, man, if that guy made his block, or this guy's able to pick up a first down on the ground, or, any number, if there's no penalty here, you're looking at maybe a different result. And it doesn't mean they scored 35, 40 points, but certainly you're in the 20s and you've got a chance to win that football game. And so, especially early, Elisa, you've got to find a way to help Bo as he gets going in his career.
Yeah, I asked Alex Singleton after the game, like, you're one of the captains of this team. I know he's a fellow captain, but he's still a rookie QB. So what do you tell him after a game like this, especially like you said, when there's moments that I'm sure he wants back, I'm sure he feels we're on him. And Alex just said, you just tell him it's just one game. Like, this one game does not define you. This isn't like college. Like, you have a chance to continue to go out there and be better. And he said, we have to be better around you. And he mentioned how, the defense was really proud of their performance in the first half. And then the third quarter really wasn't there. And he felt that momentum shift. Felt like momentum was a really big phrase used a lot in this game. And they got it back in the fourth. But Alex Singleton said, like, when you lose that momentum like that, as a defense, you have to make sure you get it back fast, because your quarterback, because he's a rookie, is going to need just that extra effort from you guys as he kind of finds his footing. But, Sean Payton said today that, Bo is a very mature guy. And so I think they asked, or someone asked in the presser this morning, what do you tell him? And he's kind of like, well, it depends on the quarterback, right? It depends on the personality of that quarterback. And obviously, Bo is really mature. But, when you look at everything, like you said, you highlighted that the run game battle, that they didn't do that, their inefficiency on first and second down, they struggled a lot. What do you think are some easy fixes, I guess, for this team?
Yeah, I think it's just, and Sean Payton mentioned the coaches have to be better too. Like, it comes down to a little bit of everybody looking inward and just being a little bit more, just small fixes. Again, I think Bo Nix said, we're not far off. This doesn't feel like a big fix, like you mentioned. You just have to be a little bit better in a few different areas. Whether that's blocking your guy, picking up the right guy, finding a way to make the right, if you're running back, the right cut, the right read on that run. If you're Bo, where the ball's placed, if you're the receivers, making sure to haul in every pass. And listen, not everyone's going to be perfect. If it's in your vicinity, can you find a way to make a play for your quarterback?
Yeah.
I thought there were times where you just needed a guy to make that play, and the Broncos weren't able to do that, or they would do that, but then you couldn't follow it up with another play, and you would go backwards via penalty or a loss, or something of that nature. I think, Elisa, when you look at this, you've got to also remember it's just week one, and not in terms of, like, it doesn't matter, but weird things happen week one. Everyone's still figuring things out. Last year, Sean Payton talked a lot about it's a race to improve over the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick used to say all the time, the first 4 weeks of the year, you're really figuring out who do you have on your team, what's our identity going to be. So I'm interested to see not just this week against Pittsburgh, but moving forward over the next few weeks, how does this team develop? How does Bo develop in particular? Does he get more comfortable? Are there more flashes? Does he learn from, he said that interception to Cortland Sutton near the goal line was just a bad decision. How does he learn from that? And that's so much of, this is not a veteran quarterback. This is a guy making his first NFL start. No matter how many starts he had in college, it's still your first NFL start.
Yeah.
And he said he could feel the difference in speed. So how does he learn from this moment? Certainly in the post-game presser, Lisa, you could tell he's got this mentality that he wants to be perfect. He wants to be better. Yeah. He's not okay with losing, even though, like you said, it's not like it's something I think about a lot. A lot of these guys, if they came from good college programs, you're used to losing maybe 1 or 2 games a year. And so when you start your season off with a loss, it does eat at you. And I don't think there's anything bad about that. You should hate, Sean Payton often says, you should hate losing as much or maybe even more than you love winning. And the Broncos, with Bo Nix, I think are in good hands, but I'm interested to see how he responds. Sean Payton did say, listen, this week challenge is even tougher because you've got a veteran defense in Pittsburgh, so it's not like it gets any easier, but how can they take some of the positives from this game, be a little more consistent, not have the self-inflicted wounds, and find a way to get a win?
Yeah, and I think, like you said, They're trying to find their identity, or they're trying to find what they're going to be. You can definitely stamp week one as this team having a pillar of resiliency and fight and those things. Rookie receiver Devon Vele showed promise that he could play. He had, I believe, a team high of 8 catches, which ties the second most receptions by a Bronco in his NFL debut, only behind Eddie Royal, who had 9. Now, when they asked him about that, they asked him about tempo, right? Because Champagne runs really good practices to get these guys ready. And so they asked him, what is it about that helped you here? And he's like, well, the tempo was pretty much the same. Obviously, you're never going to get the exact same experience running with the ones, but he said that he did feel prepared and that he's not really worried about the stats. He's really just trying to do what he can, whether it's 10 catches or no catches, to kind of be that facilitator. But that ties into the young and hungry of this team, but also ties into almost how that maturity is kind of going down to these rookies, right? Like, yes, you can be excited, I'm sure, when you got home and when you called your friends, like, yo, I got 8 catches. But for you to kind of keep that composure and just like, it's a bigger picture. And again, like, I think having that young fight all the way to the end, because they had a chance to win this game at the very end. Riley Moss if he makes a couple, certain plays or certain things go the Broncos' way, there's a chance that they could have came back. And I think Bo really touched on that. So the high praise from his teammates. What did you see from him? The fact that he didn't get discouraged after those 2 interceptions early on, he kind of came back. And Alex Singleton said, like, that's why we like him and that's why we got him. Yeah.
I think one that's, again, it's what you... Like, I feel 2 different ways. One is like, it's good to see. I'm impressed. I'm encouraged, but it's also like, that's what you have to have from your quarterback. Like if it's the other way and you get in the tank, you have no chance in this league. You're going to throw interceptions at times. Obviously, he didn't throw very many at Oregon. It's going to be a learning experience this year of how to figure out what throws he can make, when not to make. But the fact that he was able to do it in different ways down the stretch, it wasn't working deep down the field through the air for the most part. A lot of his targets were kind of these short intermediate passes. You mentioned Vele had 8 catches. I think it was for about 40 yards. And so obviously not, at least to Vele, like, you're not getting these 15 to 20 yard catches all that often. And so how do you still find a way to make a play? Okay, get out of the pocket and run. And we'll see, is that more of an emphasis moving forward? Obviously, you want to be able to play from the pocket mainly, but that seems to be a strength of his. So we'll see how much that's involved moving forward. But yeah, I think there's no doubt in my mind about Bo's makeup and that he's got the right stuff that it takes to do this. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to it than that. And again, that's where it comes back to like the guys around you making plays, because, if Javonte Williams on that first possession doesn't slip, he's probably got a touchdown. Mm-hmm. And if, Lil Jordan Humphrey is able to haul on a 3rd down pass, you've got another set of downs. And there was, Jaleel McLaughlin has a great run to get you into Seahawks territory in the first half, and then you go backwards from there. And those are some of the situations where if you're able to make just a couple more plays, and now it's 17-9 at halftime, or it's 20-9 at halftime, now you're looking at a different game. And the Seahawks, we'll get to the defense, but they were able to, because it was so close, they were able to stay in what they wanted to do in that 3rd quarter. And it obviously ended up getting the Broncos in that 3rd quarter. They ran the ball really well. But if you take that lead, so you take advantage early, you get a touchdown, they've got a safety, you get another touchdown.
You kill their momentum.
You kill the momentum, and then you force them to play the game differently than they want to play it, because the Broncos were getting to Geno Smith early and they were wreaking havoc. And there was a lot of conversation, especially early on Twitter, of, hey, Bo Nix is struggling to get off to a good start in this game. At halftime, he and Geno had basically the same numbers. And so, and you look around the league at Caleb Williams and what he did in his first start, and Jaden Daniels, and it's not like Bo Nix is this isolated guy that had a challenging go of it at times this weekend. Like, this is just what rookie quarterbacks face. It's what a lot of quarterbacks around the league face in week 1. And so, I was encouraged, to get back to your original point, by the resilience. You just hope that, can you take advantage of the opportunities earlier so that you're in a better position later?
Right, especially when you're going against veteran teams like this, right? Because you can't really let up. Like, you need to strike while the iron's hot. And, head coach Sean Payton talked about that. Like they don't need an explosive play every single play, but they do need a couple in there just to kind of spread it out. And, Javonte Williams, he did have a couple slips. He mentioned that after the game, he talked to one of the players. Like he was calling, hey, like, what's up with the field? Like, obviously, it was nothing like official or anything like that. But he did say that one of the Seahawks players said they had received new turf, so that was kind of it. But Williams said in his post game, he was just like, it's not an excuse, but it was almost for him to know, like, is it me? Am I the problem? But I think that was kind of good mentally for him to be like, all right, so the turf, and that's a whole different conversation, turf and grass. But they really couldn't find a rhythm. And I'm going to give you these numbers really quick. The Broncos are 5-18 on third down. Red zone efficiency was at 25%, 25 rushing plays, under 100 yards rushing, averaging 4 yards per rushing plays, and some fumbles. I mean, that's just not a recipe for success.
Yeah, and especially in the running game, if you take out Bo's carries, it really doesn't look great. And then when you watch it, there were times where, like, hey, Jaleel has that big run, like I mentioned. Javonte has a nice carry. It didn't work consistently enough that Sean Payton was happy with it. He mentioned it as both the offensive line has to get to their landmarks, as they call it in the run game, to block the right guy, to block them on the right spot of the field. It's more than just, hey, block this guy. It's where do you block him and how do you set up these rushing lanes. It's the running backs choosing the right way to go. And there were some times where the Broncos have 1st and 10, and they've got 2 rushing attempts to start a drive, and they're stopped for no gain or a yard, and it's now you're in 3rd and long. And we saw a couple times where Bo made plays on 3rd down, but it's just not a recipe for success for any team, any quarterback to consistently face 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. I mean, I talked about it a lot last year because the Broncos, and the year before, the Broncos found themselves in that position. If you're able to set things up a little bit better on the early downs, which I'm sure will be a focus moving forward, you're going to have more success on 3rd down. You're going to keep drives going. Defensively, it helps if your offense can get those first downs, because then you're not on the field as much. And the defense played really well in the first 2 quarters. Certainly got some big stops in the 4th. It was a struggle there in the 3rd, I think in part because the Broncos offense struggled to stay on the field. And so it's like you're out there for 3 plays, boom, you're right back out there. And it's just asking a lot of that group. And we hear the term a lot. Hey, how do you play complementary football? If the Broncos are able to stay on the field a little bit longer, they certainly can do that better. And I think that'll help them down the road here. But yeah, it was, Elisa, again, I don't want to make it sound like it was bad, because I think that a lot of people online watch, or the online reaction was you watch it and you're like, we lost. And there's just a lot of negativity already. Pat Surtain came to Bo Nix's defense on Twitter and was like, hey, everybody just relax a little bit here.
I did see
that. I love from Pat as a captain, showing that sort of leadership, defending his teammate.
Say it with your chest, Pat.
Exactly. But it's like we're early here, and there were some really positive things. And, are you going to look back in a few weeks and say, man, I really wish we would have held on in Seattle. We'd be in a better spot here. Sure, I can see that. But you've got to go through some of these things. And when you go back and look at it, I came away from watching the game feeling a lot better than I did as we were on the plane back from Seattle last night.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And obviously there were too many third and 8s, and there was all that stuff. But again, I think I was very encouraged by the way that this team really rallied around their quarterback. And again, speaking of Pat, like we mentioned a little earlier in the pod, after the game, he didn't have that demeanor of like, here we go. It was kind of just like, okay, all right, gotta fix this. All right. And he was very positive, and he even said, like, I know it's a loss, and I don't want to make it seem like I don't care. I care that we lost, but there's a lot to learn from this game. There's a lot to take away from this game. There's a lot that we can see. And Pat had a great game against DK. I think he kept them to, I think, 1 catch, 14 yards in the first half. And then most of all of the first half was played on Seattle's side. We didn't even see them on our side. We had our own view from the press box, but we barely saw them on our side, realistically. So I think that was encouraging to see also, because it shows that the defense is really clicking on all cylinders, which, again, they're the more veteran guys, they're more established guys on that side of the ball. And Bo gave credit to that. He said that the special teams and the defensive players, they played incredible, that, he was so grateful that he has that. A lot of quarterbacks don't have that,
Right.
and they have to put up a bunch of points because their defense can't hold water. And ours was just the Broncos defense was just very, very efficient, especially again in the first half.
Yeah, it took them to the Seahawks till their fourth drive, I think, to get a first down. Obviously, you have the big play early with Singleton. You have the special teams play that sets up one of the safeties. A holding call in the end zone earns the other one. I was impressed, Elisa, not just with kind of, the back end, I think, did a nice job. Brandon Jones in his first action came up and made some tackles. Surtain obviously was Surtain against DK Metcalf, who's one of the best receivers in the league.
Yeah.
I thought there were a couple of those calls against Surtain that a little bit ticky-tack, especially when you then see Cortland Sutton getting hit in the face and getting his jersey tugged as he's trying to catch a ball on third down. A little confused how one of those is PI and the other one's not, but water under the bridge, I guess. But in Riley Moss, too, there were a couple plays where, hey, Geno throws a back shoulder throw to Tyler Lockett, and it's just Riley's in good position, and there's just not much he can do there. That's a veteran quarterback making a play to a veteran receiver. Obviously, the last play, he's in position. Tyler Lockett makes an unbelievable catch.
Yeah.
The Broncos are maybe off the field if they're not offsides there. And, again, that's a tough one for Baron Browning because the play clock is basically down to 0. You move just a split second fast, and you're trying to make a play. I get it. It would have been interesting to see. I think there was, like a minute 40 left, so it would have been interesting to see what the Broncos could have done if they got the ball back. That would have been really exciting, actually. But what impressed me most about this defense was the front. And last year, that was a problem. And, again, in the third quarter, it kind of got back there. And Sean Payton mentioned, hey, their mix of plays from run to play pass, caught us a little off guard, weren't able to adjust quickly enough. I do wonder, again, if some of that was just how much the Broncos were on the field there defensively. The offense, unfortunately, wasn't able to sustain drives. So Vance Joseph's group was just out there kind of in rapid succession. Yeah. But I was encouraged in the first half, the way they stopped the run, the way Jonathan Cooper was able to get to the quarterback. DJ Jones, I thought, had a nice game. Zach Allen, having some of those guys around him in JFM. JFM didn't blow up the stat sheet or anything, but his contributions allowed Zach Allen to do certain things. And so that was encouraging for me because especially as you play some of these teams moving forward, if you're not good enough up front, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a challenge. And so you've got to find a way to limit some of those, limit that big run in the third quarter, essentially. But, you turn the ball over a few times, hold them to 26 points, get the takeaway, obviously. I thought there was reason to be encouraged by the defensive performance.
Well, I was really encouraged by Riley Moss. I mean, his whole goal was to start alongside Pat Surtain. And I feel like, as in your first career start, they're going to go after you, right? Because if Pat's on the other side, they're like, let's go that way. And so I think he really held his own in a sense because he actually led the Broncos in tackles. He had 12. And I think for him and his confidence and what he was able to do, I think it's impressive that he was kind of able to kind of find his moments in this game, right?
Yeah, and gosh, I'm not sure you want your corner to be your leading tackler, but I guess it's good that he makes those tackles when presented with the opportunity, but just maybe too many runs out on the boundary there, especially in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Again, I thought Moss was pretty good in his first start. It's hard, some of those plays are just hard to defend where you're so close, and Tyler Lockett's about as good of a number 2 as you're going to see. Not a lot of teams have a guy like Tyler Lockett as their second receiver. So it's not always going to be that much of a challenge. Riley Moss will grow, I think, as he continues to play.
Yeah.
McMillan, I thought, had a nice game in the slot. This defense in general, outside of a couple of plays, a couple of communication breakdowns, that one to the running back, that something feels like it happened there for him to be that open for the touchdown there early in the fourth quarter. But I'll just be interested to see, because also late in the game, the Seahawks are probably not pushing it as much as they could have.
Yeah.
And so how does this defense respond in a close game? Can they come up with a stop when they need it? Those are the things that with a rookie quarterback and an offense that's finding itself, you're probably going to need your defense at some point to keep making those plays. And so how do they do this week against Pittsburgh? Obviously, as we're recording this, I haven't seen anything from Mike Tomlin about what the plan is there in terms of who's going to start at quarterback. But if it's Justin Fields, if it's Russell Wilson, can you make plays to stop those guys or to get turnovers and help this offense? And then, hopefully next week they take advantage offensively and score touchdowns instead of field goals. That's got to be the recipe here of, I don't want to say there's no margin for error, but certainly some teams, and hopefully the Broncos get to this point, you can make some of these mistakes and still overcome them and still put up a bunch of points in a hurry. It feels like the Broncos need to, where they are right now, like take advantage of those opportunities when they can, because there are going to be some growing pains and some learning moments with Bo as a rookie.
Yeah, and the Broncos recorded 2 safeties in the first half against the Seahawks. It's the third time in NFL history that a team has recorded multiple safeties in a season opening game. My favorite part of the safeties was, if you guys are listening, you can't see me do this, but if you guys are watching on YouTube, he was just every time, it didn't even matter. He was just it's there. Count it. Give it to us.
Singleton did a nice little dance.
Just little baby shark dances. But again, looking shortly to Pittsburgh, obviously we don't have a lot yet on that because we just got done with week 1. But, it's getting to the quarterback early, right? Denver's defense limited the Seahawks 3 of 12, 33% on third down efficiency. Again, they played most of the first half on their side of the field. Jonathan Cooper was able to get 2 key sacks. I think he finished with 3 on the day.
I think 2, but they were early. So a good game from him. That's what you want to see from Cooper and Browning. I saw some stat that of pass rushers with at least 15 rushes this weekend, they were both in the top 10 in terms of pressure rate. So it was encouraging from that standpoint.
Yeah, and then, again, you have Baron Browning. I think he forgot he was a football player and became a WWE superstar.
That was a crazy play. Kind of the reverse takedown of the running back there.
My goodness. I had to wait for that to go on social media because I was like, I need a close-up of that because we saw it, and I was just like, did he flip him over? And so we kind of all looked around each other, and it was pretty impressive. The little somersault tackle he had going there.
That was good. I'd be out for 8 weeks if I tried to do that.
I can't even do a somersault. But, it is the first time 2011 the Broncos defense also forced a turnover in the first drive of the season dating back to the Raiders. Didn't allow a first down in 3 possessions. These are some positives. We're gonna shout out our defense on this one because it is the altitude advantage, and we did have an advantage with our defense. This one I got from a tweet from a lead writer on the Broncos. It said the Broncos are the first team to record 2 safeties in the game since the Dolphins did it in 2017 against.
Unfortunately, the Broncos.
Yeah, I know. But that was good. That was good, to see that. And then obviously Jonathan Cooper becomes the 3rd Bronco to be drafted by the team in the 7th round or later of the NFL to reach 15 sacks with the team. It was his 3rd. That's where I got the number 3 from. It was his 3rd multi-sack game. That's where I got the number 3 from. I was like, where did I get that 3? But yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's we keep coming to this. It's week 1, and so
there's a lot of good that came out. I know it doesn't show on the scoreboard. Obviously, we want W's. That's what we want. But we knew with this team being so young, you're gonna go through those growing pains.
Yeah, and listen, it ended up being a 1-possession game, and when it's a 1-possession game, you can look at probably 5 to 10 plays and say, hey, if this went the other way, maybe you're on the other side of it. And so that's what I think the Broncos just have to find a way to be on the other side of that. Obviously, it's easier said than done because it takes a number of different things to make that happen. Yeah. But it's just such a small sample size right now that I'll be interested to see what does week 2 look like? What does week 3 and 4 look like? It's going to be a few weeks before you really know
get a sample pool
what you're getting. And exactly, the NFL is it's such a week-to-week reactionary league. Mm-hmm. Sean Payton said that Monday that, hey, you guys know the momentum shifts that come with this game, that come week to week, that come within a game. You just got to find a way to keep that momentum on your side. And he said he does like the makeup of his group, the complexion of his group in terms of being able to answer that challenge. But now we have to see it. And how do you make sure that 0-1 doesn't become 0-2 or 3? How do you make sure that you respond right back? That's what the challenge is. And starting fast isn't necessarily just about week 1. It's this whole kind of first quarter poll. And so the Broncos have a chance to respond here this week in week 2. We'll get to that, obviously. But I'm just interested to see kind of what one, of course, how does Bo look better? But in general, what positives can the team carry forward and what can they clean up?
Yeah, and I think another thing to look at is like this team doesn't want to be the team that like almost like does their like, hey, like we they don't want to be the team that's like, oh, next week we'll get them, and they don't want to be that team. And so they really do take to heart what they can see and the fact that they've seen the game already, they've watched plays. Alex Singleton had mentioned like we're gonna go back, we're gonna watch it, we're gonna learn from it, we're gonna throw it away, and we're gonna move on to Pittsburgh so that we can be ready for our quarterback and have the same and better performance defensively. That momentum shift is obviously a really big deal. Sean Payton mentioned it a few times too. Like, you know, when a team loses that momentum, it happens. You're like, oh, we could have got a touchdown there. Those little bits of momentum also go to the other team, right? Because when you do give up a big play, and the other team only comes away with 3 points or 2 points in some cases, it's like, okay, we're still in this, right? It's still a one-possession game, et cetera. And I think Bo had a really good point when he said this game could have got away from us. And I think that's what a lot of the players are sticking to and really kind of taking from this, where it's like it could have got away, they could have got discouraged, it could have been a blowout. You're facing Geno Smith. He's not a rookie quarterback. You know, he's someone that can put up numbers. And so when you don't let that happen, that helps you put momentum back on your side a little bit going into the next week.
Yeah, for people who are listening, the mechanics of an NFL game is you're watching from the press box, at least we are, and then at some point you've got to head down to the field and be ready for post game. And there's always this balance, especially in a visiting stadium that we don't see all the time. There's different elevator setups, like who has a fast elevator. Allegiant, where the Raiders play, is a very slow elevator. There's stairs.
It is.
A couple years ago, I ran down 11 flights of stairs with Steve Atwater. I thought he was going to pass out when we got to the bottom. But so in this particular game, after the second interception, I decided to head down to the field, watch the rest of the game from there. Mm-hmm. And so I missed some of the Broncos drive where they scored that touchdown. Mm-hmm. And watching it back, I saw the touchdown, but didn't see the initial run. Like watching it back, Bo completed some quick passes, and I get that the Seahawks are playing back a little bit. They don't want to give up the big play. They're playing prevent a little bit, but it was just enough that with the Josh Reynolds catch at the end of the first half, with the time that Bo steps up and throws it to Cortland in the middle of the field on third down, with Bo scrambling for a first down at one point, like there was just enough that I was like, okay, can we take this like if you're picking it up with your hands, like this little heap of positive plays and just like make it bigger. Extend it.
Yeah.
Take advantage of those and make it a more consistent thing, because if you can play like that, you're going to be in good shape. But it was just enough watching it that I was like, okay, if you're the Broncos, you're like, we came up short. We didn't make enough plays in the first quarter. But like you said, Elisa, we were still in it. And one or two plays here or there in the fourth quarter, and maybe we find a way to come back from 13 down and win this football game. That to me says a lot more than if, hey, this gets away from you don't score, Bo throws another couple picks and you lose by 14 to 20 points or more, and you're just like, man, we got a long way to go.
Yeah.
This instead, I think you could see, hey, and that was what Sean Payton said in part on Monday, is like, man, you watch this and you're like, there are some chances here, and you could have a very different feeling. And so I think encouraging to some degree, but you're also just like, man, maybe we let one get away.
Yeah, and when you look at special teams too, you got to give a shout out to them, because they did their job in terms of also helping out this team get into good positions. Will Lutz hit all of his field goals, which we're going to need him, I'm sure, later down the stretch. So it's good to see him kind of just go. Obviously, he's a team captain as well. So for him to have a good game with less than 5 minutes left in the first half, they basically make the perfect kick. They pin the Seahawks to start on the 1 yard line, which sets up that second safety by Zach Allen. And I think, when you're firing on those cylinders, that's also good to see. You have to play as a complete team. And so you can't just have a high-powered offense and that's it. You can't just have one thing. You need to be a complete team. So I think the pieces are there, and the pieces that struggled, I feel like, you kind of knew they were going to. Obviously, I don't think we could have the Broncos first saw like the run game being as choppy as it was and not finding that rhythm. But I do think that when you have the other pieces together, you can kind of see like, okay, we're going to reach the bigger picture
Yeah.
We're not missing pieces.
Right. And I think the good news is, kind of big picture, is Bo Nix is only going to get better, right? And so if the defense can keep up that effort, if the special teams can keep up that effort, if some of the guys around Bo, offensive line, running backs, wide receivers, I would love to see, Greg Dulcich. I was eager to see him. I think he only had 1 or 2 catches. There's maybe an area for him to make more of an impact. I think the encouraging thing, and again, it's not like Bo is not going to have games still where he struggles. It's possible that he at some point puts up numbers that don't compare favorably to this game, that are worse than this game.
Yeah.
But big picture, his worst game at the University of Oregon was his first game, which makes sense, right?
John Elway's worst game was his first game.
And so there will be moments still where he struggles, but you're expecting that he takes steps. And so the fact that you go on the road and have a chance against a really good defense
in a loud environment
with a veteran quarterback on the other side and some really good receivers and playmakers, and you're able to be in it. Obviously, you want to win. It's not a moral victory league.
Nor do they want moral victories.
Right. But if you can say that, hey, maybe not this game. And again, I don't know that it's going to be a linear progression where every week you get 5% better, but say a month from now, he's 20% better or 50%. I don't know what it is, but you see him make those strides. You're going to start to see this success and you're going to start to see the results. And I don't have any doubt based on what I saw in training camp, what you saw from Bo, and in terms of how the coaches talked about him in the pre-draft evaluation process, where, hey, the first time he does something, maybe there needs to be a correction, and then he doesn't make the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
Or the second time he does it, he looks a lot more comfortable. And then the third time, you even saw that in training camp, the first install with Bo, maybe a little rough. Second time they went through it, a little better. Third time, by the third week of training camp, fourth week of training camp, he got it, and he was making plays. And obviously there's a different level of speed now, and they're throwing some crazy stuff at you, but this is the starting point for Bo, and I don't want to go too far on this, but I just think there's a lot of consternation on the internet of Bo didn't look good. And I think if you watch it back, he probably looked better than you thought just watching the TV copy in real time. And also, this is the starting point. This is not the finished product. He is going to grow from here. And again, if you put Bo Nix's numbers on Caleb Williams, Bo Nix's name on Caleb Williams' number, you also would be like, oh, that wasn't as great as I expected. And so all 3 rookies struggled to some degree this weekend. All 3 of them are going to get better. Surprise, surprise, rookies looked like rookies, and it will get better from here. I'm excited to see how they progress. Yeah,
I mean, you look at the score. If you don't watch the game and you just check the score and you see it, 26-20, you're kind of like, we had a chance there, right? I'm saying if you just don't know anything, you're coming in, you're under a rock, and you look at the score, it's kind of like, oh, wow. I feel like a lot of people's reaction was especially if you're not part of Broncos country, was like, wow, that's a lot closer than I thought, and you kind of have that. And I think that plays into it because it's different when you look at a week one and yes, you're thinking maybe it got away from us or we got to do X, Y, and Z. But I think it hits different when it's 47-10 or some of the scores that we did see around the league from quarterbacks that are in year 2, year 3. And so I think when you put that
or very highly paid quarterbacks,
that just did not have a dynamic game. So I feel the same way as you. I think that's one of the things it is week 1. It is his first game in the NFL. This is the NFL. These aren't random players. This isn't the replacements, guys. This isn't players out there that we've never heard of. These are top of the top guys that are looking to make plays for the team. Tyler Lockett, again, being one of them, really being the bright spot on that entire offense the entire game, really kind of getting those key plays going. So before we get out of here, obviously we're excited for week 2 because it is also the first home game of the season. We're really excited to see you guys on Sunday. Broncos country is going to be against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the football gods they have a funny sense of humor, I feel. But we are ready. We're ready for war. Okay. I have my battle nails on. They're blue and orange. Aric does not, but it's all right. It's all right.
Mine are just chewed from being stressed out.
But we're excited about this game. How excited are you just to be at home, having that experience, I feel like it's going to be good for Bo too, right? Like you're going to be in your arena with Broncos country.
Yeah, and obviously we'll talk about a lot more when our next episode publishes Thursday, but it just, you don't have to deal with the crowd noise. It'll be a little bit easier in the operation standpoint, which I actually thought was pretty good. Yeah. And it just gives you another opportunity. And it's going to be hard, again, because the Steelers' defense is really good. If you saw what they did to the Falcons, if you saw what they've been doing for years, it's going to be hard. It might not be pretty again, but hopefully Bo can find a way to make a few plays, give the Broncos a chance to win. And yeah, I think these are all just little touch points on this journey to getting where you want to go. And excited to see the next one.
Yeah, I'm excited. Week 2, Pittsburgh Steelers at Denver Broncos. That's Sunday, September 15th, 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time. We are going to dive really deep into that on our next episode. But we're super excited to see you guys this week in Broncos country. This is Altitude Advantage with the team reporter, Elisa Hernandez, lead writer, Aric DiLalla. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. We'll read some comments next time, too.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, we're gonna comb the internet. We wanted to see. We'll see what y'all write.